Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Meshery Build and Release call. This call takes place every other Thursday. So this is the even part of the week. So second and fourth Thursdays of the month. So here we are, and here we usually talk about end-to-end tests, unit tests, integration tests, things regarding workflows, and everything that is leftover item of the development call, which happens every Wednesday. So if you haven't already joined the if you're not already subscribed to the calendar, please do so. Yeah, you can do that by filling the newcomers form. The two meetings that I would recommend is the newcomers call, where you get an idea of the overview of the project. The other one is, of course, the development call, which happened yesterday, and that's kind of that's the call where we have the most attendance. So a lot of times things related to CI are skipped over. So we cover them in this call. So that was the context for the call for the newcomers. And before I start with the standing agenda item and the other items, I would like to look in the chat to see if there are any new folks here so that you can introduce yourself. And I do see Venkadesan. Can I call you Venka?
Call me as Venkat.
Okay, Venkat. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Venkadesan Kadirvel. Actually, from India, but recently relocated to UK. I have 10 years of industry experience, and I have worked on various technologies like big data, networking, and in the cloud, as well as SD-WAN technologies. So I have my I have worked on the Golang, Python, and shell script to develop a lot of technologies in my past employment. And I have a strong cloud and virtualization expertise, where I have used to manage the on-premise and cloud labs for our previous employers, actually.
Okay, that's nice to know. So you are looking for open source contributions here, right? Across
Yes,
the project.
I have used Golang to develop microservices for the SaaS platform, in my past employment. So I wanted to continue learning my Go skills, and wanted to contribute to the open source project. Yeah.
Have you gotten time to look at the source code of Meshery, Mesh and the adapters?
Not yet. Actually, I recently joined, and I will take a look into it. So yeah.
Okay, do you have access to the architecture deck so that that can help you to know like what component talks to what component and all that? So do you have access to the architecture deck?
I don't think so, but I have visited that site, and I have seen that architecture. Maybe
Okay,
I will let you know uh, if I have the
okay.
access or not. Yeah.
Pranav, will you drop the link to the deck in the chat so that?
Yeah. Okay.
Have you filled the newcomers form?
Yes, I did.
Okay, then you should have the access. Pranav will drop the link so you can take a look at the architecture.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so let's start with the call. Before we move to any of the agenda items, the first thing to talk about is the Messi test plan. So it's a recurring thing that I talk about every on every call. So basically, this is a spreadsheet that we maintain, which aggregates all of the workflows. We use GitHub Actions for most of our workflows, and so we have the core Meshy repository here and the adapters, and there are tests in both the adapters as well as Meshy core. And just so that we have one place to track all of the tests, we maintain this particular spreadsheet. So if you add any particular, let's say, it can be a build, it can be a unit test, integration test, it can be anything a new that can be thought of as a new workflow, should be also mentioned over here. And sometimes this particular spreadsheet goes out of sync with the actual state of what all the workflows we have. So that's why we need contributors to make sure that in like a few weeks ago, we had few contributors who helped to make sure that there is consistency and all. So if you want to contribute to CI, there are a lot of CI issues, and while you do so, always mention this particular Meshery test plan spreadsheet in your pull request. And you might also see that if you create an issue, also drop this particular spreadsheet. So any change that is made to the repository should also be documented over here. That's about this particular spreadsheet. And as you can see, all the adapters are grouped into this one row because we need consistency. So all the tests across all the adapters are essentially the same. The end-to-end tests are the same. The multi-platform builds, both for ARM and AMD, are same across all the adapters. The code actually is like almost the same, and that's what we shoot for. If you find any inconsistencies across these particular adapters, the only part of the code that is different. So these are service mesh adapters, particularly because in previously, 2 years ago, we were laser focused only on service meshes. So we had adapters for each of them. For the most popular of them, some of them are deprecated. So for the ones which are maintained, the only thing that changes across the adapters is the actual core logic, which talks to that particular the business logic of that particular service mesh. So the installation of Istio might differ from the installation of traffic mesh. The Istio adapter might offer some other like out of the box things like book info application. Maybe the other service mesh doesn't. So those things differ. Other than that, most of the code should be the same. The workflow should be the same, and everything should be the same. That's what we shoot for. The things that are like common functionalities that are used by all the adapters are moved over in the adapter Meshery adapter library. That's another repository under the same Meshery org. So that's kind of the way we work. And these adapters are nothing but these are gRPC servers, and Meshery is the gRPC client. So every time you need to like invoke a adapter specific operation, so you can do it directly, or like in the previous version, you were to go into the dashboard, and like for example, this is the dashboard. Here I'm connected to all these adapters. You could go into the lifecycle page, and here you can this is a much more explicit way of managing your service meshes, where you provide like what you want, what namespace do you want. There is a lot of hard coding involved here. So for example, you can only click on this plus button, click on Istio service mesh deploy, and you can't configure it much. But then we have mesh map. Again, I won't go into what mesh map is. If you haven't already signed up, you can sign up for mesh map. This is this is a closed source right now. This is the SaaS platform. And this is not specific to a service mesh. This is like most of the cloud native projects are covered in under mesh map. So that's kind of the I would say the primary thing most of Meshery is shooted at. Other than that, so yeah, that was an overview. I detoured into the architecture, but yeah, just to give you an idea of what these adapters are and what this particular core is. Some of these workflows are missing over here. If someone takes a note of it, please add those things. So for example, I know for a fact that there are certain workflows in so if I were to go in like Meshery, and here inside of .github workflows, all of the workflows that are here should also be here. So for example, I know for a fact that there are two workflows which are about CNCF playground deployment. So this particular playground.meshery.io that you see, this is deployed on a VM that is provided by CNCF. So there is a particular and so basically on one VM we deploy the cluster, we deploy Meshery playground, and on another we deploy the cluster which connects to that Meshery instance, so that there is isolation. And the second cluster that users, so the second cluster basically, so we have cluster one where Meshery is deployed, and then we have cluster two where the users deploy stuff. So that's the playground cluster. So everything. So for example, you can go to mesh map and you can create stuff and play around things. And we want to clean up the cluster because users can deploy anything. So after every 24 hours or something, I don't know what's the this is the reset script. It happens every run the job every day at midnight. So, and this script is pretty dumb right now. So if you want to contribute here, you can help out and in cleaning out this thing as well. So for example, right now we just loop over all the namespaces and just delete the ones which are not which are not whitelisted. So we don't delete the monitoring namespace or the kube system, but this is pretty dumb because it doesn't delete the non-namespace resources. So for example, if someone deployed, let's say a cluster role, then that won't be removed. So we need a little help over here to have better intelligence around resetting the particular cluster. So if you want to contribute, this is one place you can look over. This workflow can be found inside of Meshery's core repo. And the workflow name is CNCF Playground. I'll also put the link in the chat for others. So yeah, this is the particular workflow. So yeah, coming back to, so this workflow is also not documented over here. So when you give that a look, you can also update this particular sheet. So this is was the Meshery test plan. There is another sheet over here which is less maintained. I would say it used to be well maintained, but again, we are at the mercy of the contributors here. And this particular sheet documents all the permutation and combination of all the operations and management or life cycle of Meshery in general. So, for example, one of the tests over here you would see is just simple installation of Meshery. So, using curl. So, it's like if you apply this particular action, is this the expected outcome? If yes, then you can make a note. So, this it was a like this was a community driven effort, and there are around like 200 or something rows over here. Not all of them are like user functional testing. Some of them are unit tests. Some of them are Cypress UI end-to-end integration tests. Some of them are just GitHub workflows, and some of them are what you can see here, the end-to-end, the adapter end-to-end test. So there is a lot of tests here. This sheet can also help you to figure out what's the behavior of expected behavior of Meshery. And since this is not very well maintained as of now, you might see deviations. So it would be nice if you contribute to this particular, if you update this, if you raise issues that in this particular spreadsheet, it says that when I run mesh serial system channel, it should do this, but it doesn't do this because because some change was made 6 months ago and the sheet wasn't updated. And as I said, like people are lazy, so sometimes they don't update it. So again, this is a community driven effort. So this can help you as well to understand what's the behavior of Meshery, and this can you can also help it in return. So that was everything about the Meshery test plan. If you have any questions around it, I'll wait for 5 seconds and then I'll move over to the agenda items.
I have a question over that spreadsheet. Like,
Yeah.
if the relevant contributor has, I mean, is this rows tagged that relevant contributor?
I mean, you don't need to here, like we're not tagging any particular contributor. You can put your
Okay.
name in front of, like, I think people used to write their name inside of notes. You can provide your name that you tested it, so that other people, so you can refer back that particular thing. But I don't think we have a separate row, which in additional remarks, maybe you can add your name here in additional
Okay.
remarks.
Okay. Actually, the reason I asked because of that, like, if you have the contributor name, at least if somebody wants to do a set of set of actions to be validated, and if they know, I mean, if they verify that actions, and if they are they just wanted to validate with that uh, validate the results with that particular contributor, then that name should be helpful, so they can
Yeah.
check with the people, and they can verify that. So that's the reason I asked. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. So I think additional remarks column can be used. You can just
Okay.
anyone who tests can use this particular column. So you can refer people back to the sheet to say inside of, because we already have a lot of text inside of the notes. So I guess keeping it separate here would be good enough.
Thank you.
Okay, Mario, you had a question.
Yeah, it was just about that same question. Like,
Okay, yeah.
just
Sure.
wanted to confirm, like, why like add names, but I mean it's a spreadsheet. I don't think we're kind of like close to other alternatives for tracking testing. I at some point I looked at one tool. I don't remember the name, but if anyone has any suggestions of other ways to track a testing and regression testing progress, like, we're open.
Okay.
And maybe for now, I wanted to suggest if we can add, remember whenever there's a PR being open or maybe an issue, there's like certain links being added as comments. We can add a link to this spreadsheet so everyone's more aware, and some guidelines of recommendations of how to use it to help the contributors be more thoughtful and be able to update it, and that benefits everyone.
Yeah. So for example, right now, I think there is a particular template that comes up when you try to create an issue. So for example, if I try to create an issue in core repo and if I select this particular continuous integration / DevOps, I do get like I do get a link to the build and release docs instructions over here, and yep, there is no link to that particular sheet I was talking about. So if someone wants, so this is a small issue. If someone wants to take this up, you just need to go inside of .github, and I don't remember, like it's but there is a template. I guess it's inside of
A template file.
yeah, issue template. So inside of issue template, you can add this particular thing, so that for continuous integration, we also link this particular doc that I just Meshy test plan and other relevant links that might be helpful.
Sounds good. I can create the issue so that we can
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
open it as a good first issue or something.
Okay. Thank you, Mario.
Yes.
Okay. So moving on to the first item, which regarding Meshy Playground not connected to Kubernetes cluster for all users. So, okay. So to describe the issue pretty quick, as I said that previously we had this particular so previously we had a 2-node cluster inside of that CNCF playground that I talked about, and what we were doing was pretty. I mean, we just had gotten the particular VM, so we needed to get the thing running as soon as possible. So Meshery can manage your clusters, right? So Meshery was deployed in this 2-node cluster, and Meshery had access to that cluster. So it's open access. So the RBAC is configured in a way that it can deploy anything, delete anything. It has all the relevant permissions. And anyone who can give commands to Meshery can basically, anyone who has control over Meshery also has control over the entire cluster. And that's kind of, it's like if Google had a button which says delete Google. So it's kind of that kind of a thing where someone can come to the playground and do something bad over here. And since the RBAC is properly not into place, and there are a lot of missing things, the playground was being down a lot. So for now, what we did was we separated the cluster, as I said, and eventually we would again move on to the place where we have a cluster 1, which is the management cluster, you can say, where we have Meshery deployed, and the cluster 2, where we have the playground cluster. So now we don't have only have one cluster, which is the playground cluster. The management cluster is not there currently on the first node, where we should have a management cluster. We basically have a Docker compose file which runs a bunch of containers. So Meshery can be deployed in just a Docker mode. I mean, you can use Meshery CTL system start, and then if the platform is specified as Docker, then it will generate just a Docker compose file and like set up all the networking in place, and will deploy Meshery inside of a Docker container. If you provide it Kubernetes, then it will deploy it in Kubernetes. So this particular playground deployment that you're seeing right now, it's deployed in the Docker container right now. So since it's deployed in the Docker container, it doesn't have access to the kube config, you can say. So if it was deployed in cluster, it auto detects the kube config, so it has access to the cluster. But since it's deployed outside the cluster, inside the VM inside of a container, so of course it doesn't have access. So what I did was I logged into my account. So there is the GitHub account. So with Meshery Cloud, I logged into my GitHub account, and I uploaded a kube config, the kube config of the playground cluster, because I had that config locally on my local machine. So because I deployed it because I uploaded that particular kube config from this account, I should be able to see it if it's not like gone already. Maybe I'll have to add it again. So that's the flakiness of it. When you deploy a kube config, what we do is basically we extract the Kubernetes context from it, and we create our own context. So context is nothing but a client-side construct. If you know Kubernetes server doesn't have the construct of a context. It just has a server, right? So on client side, you inside of your kube config, you can find a user, and then you can find a server, and both of them then play together to build a context. In the same way, here the user is the user that you are logged in as, and the server we extract from your kube config, and Meshery generates its own Kubernetes context. So here you can see I'm like bound to my own GitHub account. So if I upload a particular kube config, that kube config will only be visible to me. So that cluster will only be visible to me because I uploaded that. And since it's not in cluster, since it was not auto detected by Meshery, it was uploaded by a user. So that user owns that particular context. In the previous deployment, when we had in cluster deployment, every time a user like logs in, what happens is that it would check, does this user have any particular context? The answer would be no. It tries to auto detect. It finds a kube config, in cluster config, of course, on /var/kubelet, whatever particular path that particular config is, and it finds that kube config, and it generates that context. So every time someone logs in, they have a context ready for them. But here the playground can't detect it. So of course, users, we can't like manually give everyone kube config to upload. So the straightforward solution right now, I think Pranav already took that, but I went over the whole thing to describe what the issue is. The straightforward solution right now is that if Meshery has access to the kube config, then every time someone would log in, it goes through that process of detection, and it will detect that, and then every user will have their own context generated. Right now, auto detect cannot happen because it's not in Kubernetes deployment. So the solution right now is to take the kube config manually, go into the VM, and mount it using Docker volumes to the Meshery container that is running right now. And Pranav, can you first create an issue for this if there's not already, before you create a PR, so that other people can have a reference to what I talked about and all?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, that was the um, there was a detail about this particular issue. Although again, this is not a long-term solution. Of course, the long-term solution would be to not deploy Meshery inside of that container, and use basically not use Meshery CTL to deploy it in Docker mode, but use it to deploy it in Kubernetes mode. But yeah, since like again, deploying in Docker is like fairly quick and all, so we use that for now. So and Pranav would be working on this particular issue. If someone has any questions regarding this, I'll again pause for 6 seconds and then I'll move on to the next item.
I have something.
Yeah, Mario.
It says not for all users. Maybe you already explained this, but so some users did have the cluster
the users
access, or?
the users who uploaded the kube config could see the context, because when they upload the config, the context was generated for them. But the new users, basically in a playground deployment, we rely on Meshery to auto generate context, and that auto generation will not happen if Meshery cannot auto detect the kube config. So if we go onto a mode where users have to upload the kube config manually, the auto detection is bypassed. So in that particular case, auto generation will be bypassed. So context would be created, but only for that particular user. But in playground deployment, we want everyone to have access to that particular cluster. So we want to auto
So the same
context.
cluster where, sorry to interrupt, the same cluster where Meshery server is deployed, like we want to expose that context to all the users.
We want to create a new context for every user. So every user will have a
which
different
context? Like to which cluster? Is it to the same one where Meshery is deployed?
The same one. There can be end-to-end. There can be end-to-one relationship between context and clusters. So it's fine if everyone has their own contexts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, welcome. If there are no questions, I'll move forward. Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead. So the next is by Raj. Is Raj on the call? I think he is. Raj, would you like to talk about your item? We can't hear you. There might be some issues with your mic. We still can't hear you. You might be having some network issues right now, some bandwidth issues. It looks like. Okay, I'll cover the item for you. Like if I miss something, you can write it on the chat. So I see that this particular PR you created, this is you're updating the version from the from the GitHub action that we use. you're going from 3 to 5. I guess that might be the latest version. That's why you're going to this particular version. And if you're creating a pull request over here, I would suggest that, again, as I talked about consistency, every adapter should have the same thing. So inside of CI, you're doing this. So is it this like, is it the same for other adapters, or like this change was cherry picked for Cilium? Okay, I guess you can write in the chat if you were able to get what I said. But yeah, the gist of the thing is that okay, yeah, they recommend 5. Okay, so if you can hear me, just make sure that this particular change is the same across all the adapters, so not just Meshery Cilium. Just to check what version we use in Istio. So okay, so here we are using 5. So I guess this was an effort to introduce consistency. Just make sure that all other workflows like in Linkerd and in OSM and other service meshes also have the same thing. If not, then you can update it. I think they should have. Yep, they have. So yeah, I guess so. This was a change to have some consistency. Thank you for this, Raj. We couldn't hear you, sadly. So, but yeah, we got what your change was. Thanks for this thing. And I think this change is good to go from my side. I'll approve it. If if some other maintainer can merge it, if no one else has any issues with it. So, so I'm moving on to the next item, which is about Cypress tests. So Abhi or Mario, any of our maintainers who would like to, anyone can talk about it. So who would like to?
Mario, would you like to go for it?
Yes. Let me just share. Okay, so this is to hide it. Where is that? Yeah, so as per what we mentioned in the dev meeting, so that's where I shared some updates about the fixes that were introduced. I'll have to find that again. Yeah, I guess it's where is that? I think it's this one. Yep, this one. So I mean, instead of repeating what was said back then, well, basically it's there were several fixes introduced, and the remaining issues were they'll be handled in a separate issue. And for now, these tests are going to be skipped. These are some tests for the user preferences, specifically for sending anonymous usage and performance statistics. Even though there were some retries added, these tests kept failing. I mean, not sure if it was like an abrupt decision. I'm not 100% sure. There's no problem with the functionality there, but I'll try to take a look as part of the fixing the issue, like just making this test pass, and I'll share updates. Yeah, and these were the introduced fixes. I won't go into detail, but I did add some suggestions in the Cypress testing Slack channel about like how to use the timeouts and how to properly wait for asynchronous requests being made from the front end through Cypress. And something else that I'm not missing. Let me just look at the issue. Yeah, I'll take a look, and then hopefully in the next dev meeting or build and release meeting, we'll have some updates on these failures. That's it. any
Abhi, would you
questions or
like to
comments?
Abhi, would you like to say something that Mario hasn't already said? Something that you would like to add on?
I think he covers everything, and there is nothing left to say. So these right now all the signals are green, and yeah, there is few items that is left over which is skipped for now, just because there shouldn't be any false negative. So yeah, I think that as Mario said, like this should be included in separate efforts. So yeah, that's what we are doing. Yeah, so skipping some tests until it is fixed, and everything is green now. Thanks to Mario and Kridesh. So yeah,
Mhm.
thank you.
I'd like to add that my impression is that there's just a missing weight for a certain request that the front end needs to have that information, so that clicking on those radio buttons just
Yeah.
works as expected. Because I did run them locally, but I didn't go into detail like what was happening. But if anyone knows of some changes in the API user prefs context all a route, I mean, context is a parameter, query param, but it's a post request. So if anyone knows of some change there, like feel free to share in the CI channel about, oh, you know what, I think these tests are broken because of this, and then we can triage the problem. But that's it for now.
Okay. Thanks, Abhi and
Sounds good.
Mario, for that update. And this is the next item, but this might take some time, so that I don't eat everyone's items up because I've been speaking for so long. So I'll move this over at the end of the call so that other people can get their items covered. So the next item is from Mario again, understanding Cypress retriability. Would you like to give it a go, Mario?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Let me share again. So I didn't add the topic itself, but I think Lee or someone decided it was a good topic to cover. So I'll be very brief about it, because it's just to give some context. There's this, and to anyone that might not be familiar, there's a Cypress testing channel here. So this topic is related to these suggestions I made. So there are several links I shared, and just to give some like overview of that, let me just open them up. So yeah, basically the best practice on this topic, which is the retriability, this started being like there were some intermittent issues, so the test passed on some scenarios and failed other times during the CI runs, and this gives a lot of uncertainty to contributors, because they don't know if their changes are the root cause. So it's very important to cover this. So unnecessary waiting is when we do a side wait with a specific number. It was actually one attempt that like it's usually it's being tried even on other tools like Selenium WebDriver, and these are also like a bad practice, so an anti-pattern. So instead of that, we should use route aliases. I'll explain what it is, or assertions, and these act like a guard. So it'll help Cypress to use the retriability, built-in retriability. I'll explain in a second. So to not proceed until that explicit condition is met. So this makes our test more resilient. So we should almost never wait for arbitrary time with this. And when it's yeah. So basically that's it. For example, this is an example. Like if you're sending a request, this is there's already built-in logic in Cypress to wait for the result. Even if you're not concatenating. So when do you dot then is a command that seems like a promise, but it's actually like when the response is being in Cypress world is whatever this returns, the response and other data, this is called the subject. So even though we don't do anything with a subject as I don't know, parsing the response, reading at the response code, it's not necessary to wait for these arbitrary seconds, 5,000 milliseconds, as well as the visit. When we say it's not necessary, it's because there's a load event that the browser emits. It fires it once the load event, once the static content loads. It doesn't mean that the page is ready, but whenever there's a problem, it means like we need to do something else. And going back to the retriability itself, I would suggest everyone that's interested in Cypress and running end-to-end test, iteration tests, to get familiar with this concept, which is something that runs in the background, but understanding it helps a lot to write better tests. So just very brief, like differentiating between Cypress commands, there's queries and there's assertions, and then there's actions. But these are the main ones. And if we look over here, there are different rules for each of them, whether it's a click or a type. They would act similar because they do an action against some element in the front end, right? And in this example, like, so this is a query. It queries for whatever element is focused, which I've never used that before, but I guess it's quite useful in certain circumstances. And then this is asserting for a certain class or an attribute. There's different ways of asserting. So this will be retried for a default amount of seconds. And as we can see, the other ones are like getting an element. This is using a CSS selector, and it's typing the following. So this will write to do space new line A, I'm sorry, space or white space, then A, and then enter. It'll press enter. And so it's a query and an action, a query and an assertion, and then two queries followed by an assertion, right? So this gets the specific element. This finds whatever is inside that element. So instead of querying the whole DOM, this is like helping to refine the search just to delimit whatever's like inner elements or nested HTML elements. It'll find this other element, and then this will be, since there's a should, or like whether it's an assertion, an action, or something else like of these what I'm mentioning, this will be retried for the same default timeout. So this is all that should be needed. And there's other cases, right, when there's like certain requests. We'll cover that in a second. Any questions so far? I guess no. There is a command log. So when you run, you need to use Cypress open in the Meshery UI folder. So it's the Meshery repository. There is in the package JSON, there is some specific scripts to run a Cypress in open mode. Maybe we can cover it some other time. But basically on the left side, so the desktop app will open up and we get this command log. This is very useful because you can click around, and then if you open the console on your browser, you'll see information of each of these. And if you hover or pin, which is clicking on each of them, the right side, we don't see it, but in the right side, you'll see the application that you're testing, and you'll be able to go back in time. It's another feature, Cypress, and you'll be able to see how the page or the DOM looked at that moment, before or after the action was or the command was run. So that's something very useful. And then even when you would click on a get, which is a query or a find, you'll get in the console information of the element, and you'll be able to inspect it further by expanding some of the output in the console, in the same DevTools browser console. So yeah, and just to finish with the topic, because this is only queries are retried. So yeah, it's very important to understand that only the queries are retried. Things that aren't retried are like a click, because they mutate the DOM. So this is by design, and as we can see, that's like some rule to abide to. And and we should try to avoid doing actions in the middle of the chain, like side dot get dot click dot get, like so it's something we shouldn't do. And yeah, here's an example of what we shouldn't do, and this is what we should do instead. So I invite everyone to like look at this. I am not I feel like I'm comfortable using Cypress, but these documents are very helpful. I won't talk about stubbing because it's like something we try not to do because of the pros and cons of stubbing, or like doing a bit more of a component test, so on. But anyways, it is useful to use the should with a callback. So this is when we it's not described over here, but you pass a callback to the should, so that where is that? Yeah, just a sec, it should be over here. So here, so acting on, so doing this allows you to do several actions against the return value. And I know it gets a bit confusing because this allows us to have multiple nestings, but sometimes it's useful or even necessary. And the return object is a jQuery element, and you do a side.wrap or some other actions like this, and you're able to do several, let's say, actions or assertions against an element. And sometimes it's useful or even necessary to use should or then, so that there's certain actions that, even though you're writing them one after the other, with or without concatenating, it's better to, if there's some problems with something not being there, it's because one action took more time than the timeout. So then doing this, it allows you to, what's the term, like synchronize the test. So whatever actions inside the callback won't be even attempted to be done until this other one, this one, is finished. So
Okay, Mari, just
and
to
that's
interrupt.
we'll cut it out right here.
So
Yes.
Mari, just to give a time check. So since we are like
Yeah.
just 15 minutes are left, so can
Yes.
you paste that link in the, so there's a doc you are going over, so that other people can go through that doc on themselves after you give
Of
a pretty
course.
good view of that thing.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mario, for that little lesson on Cypress. Anyways, we will go to the next item, which is from Fridish, about improving test coverage for Meshery CTL. Fridish, would you like to talk about it? Share your screen.
Sure, no problem. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, right. So that PR was to improve the test coverage for Meshery CTL. There was a previous pull request that was made, I think, a few years ago, but that added like a config test for that config file inside of the config folder, but there was still some function that was not yet tested. So basically, like, my PR was to add that those remaining parts so that we can have like 100 100% for coverage for that file, the config.co. Yeah, that's it. So I added some tests for some function, but it was still remaining some function that I haven't done it yet. So I will try to complete it and shift my PR from draft to review.
Okay, I haven't yet looked to your PR, so I think I haven't linked. Okay, so you have given the PR number, but I don't think I have. I'll drop the link. Okay, so I did. So you have added few tests for the config file. Is there a legend issue where we are tracking the other commands as well? So other than config, I don't think like all the other commands have 100% coverage. Like like this config.go, we like this config command. We also must be having other commands as well. So like where are we tracking that particular thing? Do you know of a place where we are tracking this right now? Or is there like a central issue?
Yeah. I mean, there is that's yeah.
Okay, I do
Okay.
see the issue that was created. Okay. Uh, yeah, this issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So you will take after you are done with it, you'll take other commands as well.
Okay.
Okay. So this PR is ready for review that you just created, or there are some tests failing right now?
No. There are some stuff that I need to fix before
Okay.
this.
Okay. Okay. So that's why this is in draft, of course. Stupid question from my side. Anyways, thanks, British. Is there anything else?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So
All
let me share my screen again. Thank you, Friedish, for adding that particular test and this particular issue that he was just showing. And this is about increasing code coverage of Meshery CTL. So, like, if you want to write some Go tests, there is always room here. So, in Meshery repository, you can find inside of Meshery CTL. It's pretty standard. The like structure of how all the Cobra CLIs are laid out. So, there is a CMD directory over here, which contains the entry point, and then inside of basically the internal, yeah, here you can see all the commands. So he is working on the config sub command. We have few in the okay, so the ones in the experimental were taken out. The ones were like pattern commands. So here the pattern sub command is apply.go, like the apply delete, and they all must not be having 100% coverage. So for the functions which are not tested, basically you can this will help you to reason about what are all the functionalities that Meshery CTL as a client can help you with while using Meshery server. And like it's always recommended when you want to understand something, you go to and read the tests. That's always like the easiest way to get to know about the source code. So you can look at this test to see like what's the expected behavior, kind of the code version of what I was talking about in the spreadsheet. So if you are familiar with Golang, you can take a look over here. You can add more tests. It's always appreciated if you want to increase the coverage. There are other, like there is another PR right now. I don't think that was merged. I think it was from Philip. It was in Meshy CTL. I guess yeah, it's about Kate's unit test. We would talk about it in the next item. So I won't go over it now, but yeah, some unit tests are required in Meshkit as well. So with the Go-based repositories are all the adapters, Meshery, Meshkit, and then the Meshery adapter library. So if you want to write some Go unit tests, come over here. You can inside of I guess models, you might be able to find some of the packages which don't have tests for them. So you can create an issue and write the unit tests. Or contributions are always appreciated in this area, since not a lot of people take up the unit tests and the test part of the thing that easily. So that was about the test from British. And the next item is from Vivek. Vivek, would you like to talk about this particular update?
Yeah,
If you want to share your screen, you can. You're on mute, by the way, if you're speaking.
yeah. So Basically, this was the issue. CI was getting triggered, and all the jobs were getting triggered whenever there was a PR. So this was a PR I sent. We talked about this. So I just made a PR to detect whenever there is a change in code, then only it's gonna change in Go or YAML code, then only it's gonna trigger any other jobs. And yeah,
Okay. So if there are changes in any
so
YAML file, then it would trigger
yeah,
the
one of the
code.
reviews already approved it.
Okay. Uh, I had asked for one change, and I think you had made
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
right?
I changed it.
Okay. The CI is failing. I actually it's not your fault, and I'll talk about why CI is failing. Maybe that's the next thing that you can work on. Yeah. So your change looks good to me. I'll approve it as well, and then we can get it merged right away.
Okay.
So yeah, I have approved it as we speak. So yeah, maybe some other maintainer can merge it, or I'll merge it. Thank you, Vivek, for this change. And like, can you make the same change again? I talk about consistency. So can you make the same change across all the adapters?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I would have delegated this thing, but again, since you've already, worked on this thing, so you'd be quicker with it. And while you're doing it, just make sure that one change that you might have already done, which is to go from the V1 version to V2. And I think you have already made this change in this particular
Yeah, yeah.
repo. Yeah.
I
So
made
make
that.
sure that, yeah, I saw that. Make sure that same change is present in other adapters as well. I think there are a few adapters that are missing a particular change. I'll talk about that in a while.
Okay,
So
sure.
uh, thanks, Vivek. Okay, so moving on to the next item, which was from Pranav. So Pranav, would you like to talk about?
Yes, I'm sharing my screen. So it's a very small item. It's about failing lint checks. So the issue was that we were having some unused code from our previous OAM created stuff, which we were not using anymore. So the Golang CLI was complaining about it. So I just removed it, and now uh, at least our Golang lint checks are not failing. So this started passing after this period.
Okay. So, uh, okay. So, uh, I'd be curious to know if the same thing was not happening in other adapters as well. So this particular part of the code was left out only in Istio and not others.
Yeah, I don't think in others there is something like this.
Okay. Although that's weird because usually the most consistent one is Istio. So
Yeah.
that's why I thought if Istio has this problem, then others should have. Okay. So thanks for this change. And since lint tests are passing, I think we can merge this. This is yeah. Thanks for this change, Pranav.
Yep.
So let me go to the last item. I have 4 minutes left, so I'll quickly talk about it. And so that because this is one of the most important things. And I mean, I put it in last. Anyways, I still have 4 minutes, so this thing is about failing tests. So as Pranav was showing right now, and in the case of Vivek also, we saw that there are some tests which are consistently failing, and these are the end-to-end tests. I will not go over what like the whole test do. It will take half an hour, and I have already went over this thing in like past 3 calls explaining the exact logic of this end-to-end test. But at a higher level, what it does is it calls a workflow from Meshery. Inside of Meshery, we have a central workflow, which is like a template. It sets up the environment and everything for tests to run. It starts an adapter. It starts the Meshery server, of course, after starting the cluster, and then it tries to deploy the most basic unit of a Meshery deployment, which is called a design. It used to be called a pattern, but now it's called a design. And design YAML file looks pretty same. Like how do you expect? It kind of looks like a Docker Compose as well as a like a Kubernetes YAML, having inspiration from both. But yeah, that design is imperative, of course. So it's declarative. I'm sorry, it's declarative, of course. So it has your intent, like you want to deploy a service mesh and then you want to deploy an app and all that. One example would be, I guess, it would be found in this particular step, which is pattern apply. Here you can see there is this design named Linkerd mesh. Here like this services might tell you something about Docker Compose, but it's inspired from Docker Compose, but I think it should be changed to components pretty soon. So again, because most of our designs are created from the SAS thing, the mesh map, so people don't usually see this YAML file. So there has not been a particular effort in moving from services to components. But yeah, this is a Linkerd component which tries to deploy a Linkerd mesh, and in this particular namespace with this particular version. And there are, so of course this is the error that we get. The Meshy server is not deploying it, and that's why this is failing. And these tests basically try to test the, like if you're a service mesh adapter, the most basic thing that you should be able to do is deploy a service mesh. So we try to deploy a service mesh and make some assertions about what all in the cluster came up, the pods came up or not, the services came up or not. And since this particular design apply failed, so yeah, that's why we have a problem over here. And the same problem is across all the adapters, not just this. Some of these adapters have a different kind of a problem, which is the test fails over here on the, I guess in this particular, some others like earlier step. And the reason for that is we were using the previous version V1, and I think Vivek is going to move to V2, so that's not an issue. So the issue is, why is this particular thing failing consistently? And as of now, I haven't debugged it, but we had a different model, like what Pranav was talking about, the code left over from the previous design, which was inspired from open application model. So it was the OM. So you would still see actually OAM for a lot of places, and a lot of places in Meshery, it's still being removed slowly. So it was the previous. So I would say OAM was more like a design specification which Meshery complied to, but since its use cases diverged from that of open application model, so now it like we have our own. It's not like a public spec where we are asking other people to also comply to that, but it's our internal thing. So now that's called mesh models. So we moved from an open application model to mesh model, and after moving, like we had some issues during the migration. So here, like this particular error, like for someone who's not already familiar with the internals of the code, I don't think this error will make much more sense. Will make much sense, but I'll have to go over the architecture, how the components are registered and how they're handled and all that, which I don't have time right now. But this is an area which I like. I'll debug, and I might need other folks to help me contribute over here. So if I make a fix, maybe that fix maybe that fix would also be needed in other adapters. So maybe I'll first go and fix the one in Istio, the failing test in Istio, and once I create the PR, I'll tag other people, and if you can make the same change across the other adapters as well. If you can get to it before I can, like why these tests are failing, if you can get to it before I can, that would be appreciated. But again, I guess that'll take time for someone who's not already familiar with the code base. So over the weekend, I'll give it a look. This was on my plate, so this is my item. So I'm just going over what the item is. So yeah, Mario, go ahead.
I just had this quick observation of probably it depends on where the failures are, but do you consider the output of this pipeline like helpful? Like, okay, it failed, but is it like too hard? Maybe there's a room for improvement of the output, like to make it easier to identify what's wrong, or this is just like an edge case that it's not, usually it's more helpful than exit code one or something in the bottom.
Actually, it's more helpful than that. The error says that could not find a component with name Linkerd mesh model empty and API version empty. So basically, in this particular thing,
but it's not failing there. It's failing in like the
it
bottom
actually
step.
it does fail here, but the thing is, it's Meshery CTL doesn't produce output on the std error. It throws it on std out, and it's just like it's like an info log, so kind of a thing. So of course the like the OS doesn't know that I should be editing this thing out, so that's why it doesn't like exit. So this particular, so for example, right now you can see that this particular here we have type and namespace and version, but we don't have a model and an API version, which we need to add. Actually, in the previous model, there was flexibility. We weren't mandating the use of model field and API version field in the open application model. So that's why everything was working. But now we are a little stricter. That actually has pro and cons, because we are strict with everything. We have more control over what actual component is registered and what all those things.
In
But
what version?
yeah. But
So if there's no component with that name, does it make sense for the workflow to keep going over the next steps? Wouldn't it be good to fail at that point so that this log is more evident for? I'm just asking. I don't know.
Yeah, of course. I like.
But let's leave that as feedback, and then maybe as a topic for next session, we could dig deeper on that potential improvement area.
Yeah, I mean, there are
Thanks for sharing.
Two ways to go about it. One is to add this thing inside of script where we grep the particular thing, and if we don't, like, the success is when we are successful, we get an output which is pattern successfully applied. So you can try to grep it. If you don't find it, you can just exit one, so that 3 lines of bash script can make sure that this thing fails over here. A long-term thing would be to make sure that Meshery CTL throws it on stdr, so that this particular thing fails over here only and doesn't go forward with it. So
it all depends if the rest of the output is still helpful. Like sometimes when something is not working, the rest of the steps don't care because something's wrong. I don't know.
If actually this particular step fails, then nothing matters. I mean, you have to abort right now.
Okay. So, like this is like terminal, like this is sequential, and then we fix that, and then it reruns, and then we see if something else fails, right? But good feedback on the feedback.
So here you can see that in the check if all the in this particular thing, you would see that no resources were found. It keeps going. It tries to check, and when it doesn't find anything, it sets a particular variable, and that variable, when set to true, it basically exit. That exit status, it checks if it was set equal to 1. If that is set to 1, then it exits.
So all of this basically means that linkerd is not installed.
Yeah, all of this basically means
or maybe the adapter perhaps, but
the adapter is installed, because you can look at the whole status for debugging and you can find it over here.
Correct. So it's just the actual adapter. Okay, sounds good.
The adapter is thanks. You can also look at like Meshery logs and adapter logs. There are in other steps to make sure So
so it's actually easy to debug. It's just like expanding and looking at the output.
It's good for debugging purposes only. And you're right about the fact that we should have failed over here, because I know how this thing works. That's why I was able to the instinct is that I come over on this particular step to figure out what went wrong, although it never fails. So that's pretty deceptive. So
just a suggestion to make it easier for other people have like useful
this particular
output,
workflow is
very good.
This particular workflow is in Meshery. So if someone wants to contribute to the workflow, the grep idea that I just said, you can go with that approach, or you can go with Meshery CTL approach, whichever you are more comfortable in. Mario, can you create an issue for this as well? Maybe you can create an issue in Meshery repo, just pointing it out that it should actually fail at this particular step. And whichever approach the contributor would like and other maintainers would approve.
I can do it, but is there anyone who would like to create the issue, like so that they're able to look at the file and the logs, like get more familiar with that, and then we can help them open the issue? Like, is there anyone who would like to document that issue and then?
Pranav, did you get what I said?
Yep, actually, I can. The thing that is, like, I have already seen it. The issue is like Meshery server never registered this component, and so that's the issue. It's not there in the database.
It's not there in the database. Okay, so if we check,
I've also checked in the playground. Like, this is not there.
So the linkerd adapter is not registering their components.
Yeah. And the other issue with linkerd is that, like, it's actually not able to register the component because the CRD URL is also incorrect. So if you check the log which we were just saying, this one. So the URL, if you see, they make sure this one. I also checked the URL, it's not reaching to any place. Like that's incorrect.
I think we had this problem a while back and I had fixed it, but okay. So basically, in build directory inside of config.go, we have the
Right.
like in the init routine, we have the thing of how to do the. Here you can see we have still some ohm things left over, and this particular URL is generated here. So most probably
Yeah.
this is not invalid.
Mhm.
Okay.
And like for Istio also, I checked the issue with Istio is that the Istio service mesh component is under Istio adapter. It's not on the Istio model. So that's the another issue with Istio.
It's under what? Istio adapter.
Istio operator model.
So Istio adapter is not registering as well.
Yeah. Yeah. If you check the logs, I can like tell. Like the Istio service mesh component is registered under Istio operator, not under Istio.
I mean, Istio operator is the static components. Of course, we need it under the.
Yeah. Then you have to update the deploy.yaml file because
It says that successfully registered static component with Meshery server. So it,
no, like if you check the deploy.yaml file log, yeah, this one.
yeah, here the
Yeah.
model is Istio.
It shouldn't be Istio, it should be Istio operator. Because I checked Istio mesh is under Istio operator, not under Istio.
See, there is an Istio mesh that Istio operator also offers. I think there is an Istio mesh that Istio operator also offers, but we are not trying to test that. We are trying to test our own Istio mesh, and just to confirm in front of you what the
Yeah,
model
in
is.
template, in templates also it's not there. Like I checked. It's not there.
Just FYI, I consolidated the post-meeting action items in the meeting minutes. So there's a
Okay.
calls for volunteering, and I added the Meshery CTL code coverage and creating the issue for improving the test output,
Thanks, Mario.
so on. Yeah, sure.
So Pranav, here I can see that the model name is Istio.
Yeah, like what I was saying that like for this is for authorization policy. There should be some Istio service mesh .json as well, which is not there. That is what I was saying.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, this is the main issue. Like I
Okay,
was
this
just
is
debugging, but then I also checked the integration spreadsheet, and even there it's under the operator, not under this.
I mean, yeah, there is under the operator as well as under the. Okay, that's an issue. So we don't have a Istio
Yeah.
mesh component. So that I guess these PRs that I create with like 10 lakh
Yeah.
changes at this is what makes it harder for people to.
Yeah.
So here you can see that this thing got
Yeah.
removed.
Yeah.
Okay,
This
so
was required.
okay, so the other add-ons are also not there.
Mhm.
Okay, so I guess like the best way to fix something is to remove something. I may have done that in this
and then
case.
something else broke, and
Yeah.
then you just learn something. It's part of working with software.
So I guess Pranav, there are so the reasons for each adapter failing is different. I guess in this case.
Yeah.
So if you can just create like because you have already went over and looked into the issue, if you can just create the issue then assign it to me. I'll see what I can forward. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of the call. I've talked about all these things, and once we get those issues fixed, we should have passing test in the compatibility matrix, which is this particular matrix, which has a lot of process right now because the tests are failing. So yeah, after I make the fix. Hopefully we can get most of those red crosses removed and replaced with green checks. So that brings us to the end of the meeting, and thanks for the post-meeting action items, Mario, with the call for volunteers and everything. I'll paste everything inside of in the discuss form, and I'll send out the link to the meeting minutes in the Meshy CIS channel, so the people who didn't join can get the context for what we talked about and everything.
Actually, can we share the YouTube link of this recording in the where's the good place? Meshery CI Slack channel for anyone who missed this meeting.
Yeah. We can,
I'll do that.
okay. I think like I don't have the link right now. I'll have it when I'll
After the meeting,
yeah,
of
after,
course.
after the meeting. So yeah, that will be a good thing to do. Thank you for that as well, Mario. Thank you everyone for joining in. We are 13 minutes over today. Thanks everyone for joining in, and we'll see you next week, because this call takes place every other week. So the
See you in
second
2 weeks.
Thursday, see you in 2 weeks. The second
Or in
Thursday
the
of
dev meeting next week.
yeah, of course.
Thanks
in the
all.
dev meeting. Thanks everyone.